All right, in this video, we'll begin Unit 7 on the endocrine system. And this will be a pretty short unit, just a couple of lectures compared to our last few, so that'll be good. Looking at the endocrine system, here's a lot to see, but not a lot to write down. So just kind of look at this and listen and write down what you think you need to, but some of this stuff we won't necessarily be using. Endocrine system is composed of glands and hormones. Purpose of the endocrine system is kind of a homeostatic maintenance using those hormones. Like I think of it as communicating throughout the whole body and using the bodily functions to create this homeostatic balance. The endocrine system acts with the nervous system, and so it is definitely an important partnership there, and it does that to integrate activity of the body cells. It influences metabolic activities through hormones that are transmitted through the blood. And so most of the hormones that we're going to be looking at go directly into the bloodstream. We will look at a type of gland that doesn't do that, but endocrine glands go right into the blood. The responses for the endocrine system are slower than the nervous system because it's not an electrical kind of impulse, but they are usually longer lasting. And so it's not an instantaneous kind of thing, but it can affect body processes for a long time. And so there are several things that the endocrine system controls or regulates. And so here's just a picture of some endocrine glands. It's kind of a blurry picture, but I think you can still get the idea. A couple things that it controls and regulates. One of those is reproduction, growth and development, maintenance of water, electrolytes, nutrient balance in the blood. And so basically the chemical composition of the blood is maintained by the endocrine system. Cellular metabolism and energy balance, whether or not you're getting lots of energy or not very much energy. Mobilization of body defenses. And so like your immune response and that sort of thing is regulated by the endocrine system as well. So there are two types of glands found in the body. There's endocrine glands, which we're going to spend the majority of our time talking about, and exocrine glands. And this picture demonstrates what's the big difference here. With exocrine glands, they produce typically non-hormonal substances, some sort of chemical solution. Sweat glands are a great example of this. They produce sweat. Saliva glands produce saliva. Neither one of those are considered hormones. They do have chemical properties. They do certain things, but they are not considered hormones. And they are released through ducts, ducts, which is like a tube, and they're secreted onto a surface like the skin or inside your mouth into some kind of cavity, which I guess your mouth would be that, or into the small intestines or into the stomach or something like that. And so when you think of exocrine glands, think of them being released through a tube, whereas endocrine glands, they produce hormones, but these chemicals that we will lump together and call hormones, and they don't have ducts. Instead, they release their hormone directly into the bloodstream, as you can see through that odd picture there. You have the capillaries, and the capillaries are the smallest blood vessels, and they release the cells surrounding them, release those hormones into the capillaries, which goes into the body at large. So a couple of examples of the endocrine system here. You see them here. You have the pituitary gland in the brain, which is actually part of the brain. And then the hypothalamus is actually kind of the master control gland. We'll talk more about that in a later lecture. You have the thyroid, the parathyroid, the adrenal glands. You see the pineal gland there. The pancreas is another one. The reproductive organs, both male and female, are also considered endocrine glands. I don't have a picture of the hypothalamus. I did. It is considered a neuroendocrine gland. Again, the hypothalamus is part of your brain, if you remember that from the nervous system unit where we talked about the parts of the brain. And it has an overarching kind of control over the endocrine system. And some of the endocrine glands also have exocrine functions. And so, like the pancreas is also an exocrine organ. The reproductive organs are also exocrine organs. And there are other tissues in the body that aren't considered glands necessarily that also produce hormones. Adipose cells or fat cells are a great example of ones that produce hormones. The cells like in your stomach and small intestines, kidneys, your heart, these aren't considered glands per se, but they can produce hormonal substances that get released into the bloodstream. So let's look at kind of how these chemical messengers work and some of the different names for them. A hormone, a word that I've used a lot, is just a long distance chemical signal, and it travels in the blood. It can travel also in the lymphatic system, which we'll talk more about the lymphatic system in a later unit. There are also groups called autocrines or autocrines. These are chemicals that exert effects on the same cell. And so auto means self, right? And so this is when a cell releases a chemical that affects itself. Odd, I know. There are paracrines. And so P-A-R-A, the prefix that means like alongside. And so this is when a signaling cell affects a cell that is nearby. And then these two types of things are local messengers. Obviously, when I say local, I mean like think in your local region, like the hand may release cells that can just affect these like a small little area. Like if you cut your finger, it's not going to, all those signals to repair that tissue is not going to go out to your entire body. It's just going to go to that little area, not even to your entire hand, right? And so that would be like a localized kind of signaling. There are two main classes of hormones, and they are amino acid based hormones, like you see there on the left. These can just be straight up amino acids, or on the right is the amino acid hormones. These can be proteins, and then you have steroids, which you see on the left. And steroids are lipid based, so they are nonpolar. A lot of the reproductive hormones and the adrenal hormones are in the steroid class, whereas many other hormones are in this amino acid and protein class. And we'll talk more about how those are received in the next video.